You just cut the power to their game. Now they're frozen, and you can see it in their eyes, the way the light that used to burn so smugly behind their pupils just died, and you can feel it in the air like the static after a storm, because they didn't think you'd do it. Did they? They didn't believe you'd finally pull the plug. They thought you'd play forever within the lines. They drew for you, danced like a puppet whose strings they carved out of silence and shame. They underestimated the storm you were incubating in that silence, and now look at them frozen like statues, like glitches in their own simulation. The illusion shattered, the mask peeled back, the gears exposed and broken. Because when you finally break the system that caged you, it doesn't bend, it snaps with a whimper. And they never saw it coming, because they don't know how to see anything that doesn't serve their game. They had you boxed in, cornered, shackled, under layers of quiet control, and you let it build up, didn't you? Every humiliation, every backhanded word, every smug dismissal, like you were something less, something disposable and weak. They mistook your stillness for surrender, your patience for fear. But what they failed to see was that you weren't still. You were loading, charging, absorbing every hit, like armor being forged in the dark. And now look at them frozen in a moment they can't undo, because when you finally stand up, when you finally say enough, you don't rise gently. You rise like fire through a dry forest, unstoppable, unrepentant, and merciless. And every move you make now is a reminder that they built their game on a lie, and you just burned the rule book. You see, they crafted their game so carefully, with all their little rules and unspoken expectations and manipulations dressed up as culture or hierarchy or family. They needed it to feel real to you. They needed you to believe the system was natural, unbreakable, eternal. But you've seen behind the curtain now, haven't you? You've looked past the flickering lights and the pixelated dreams they sold you, and what you found wasn't power. It was fear, because power doesn't freeze. When the lights go out, fear does. And now, they're frozen in place. Mouths slightly open, eyes searching for a script that no longer exists, because the screen's gone black, the system's down, and they don't know how to function without their control. This is the moment you realize you were never part of the game. You were the fuel. You were the core keeping their illusion alive with your obedience, your silence, your compromise. They didn't want you to win. They wanted you to stay just enough below the surface to keep their narrative strong. And now you've cut the power. Now you've pulled the plug. And they are nothing but actors with no stage, no lights, no audience, no meaning without you. They are obsolete. And this is what real power feels like. Not dominance, not noise, not ego, but clarity. The kind of clarity that carves mountains, that shatters mirrors, that makes kings out of exiles and monsters out of false gods. You don't have to scream when you own the silence. You don't have to run when you've become the storm. You don't even have to fight, because the moment you walked away, the game ended. And now they're stuck in it, glitching, spiraling, trying to reboot a system that can't function without your compliance. And you stand there, not as a rebel, but as a reckoning, as the embodiment of every silent, no, every quiet decision to stop feeding the lie. Because real revolution isn't always a war. Sometimes it's just unplugging the machine and walking into the dark with your eyes open and your soul intact. They will call you cold, ruthless, ungrateful, selfish. They will twist their faces into pain and disbelief. They will act like you betrayed them, because to them you did. You betrayed the version of you that they built in their image, the one who knew their cues, played their roles, accepted their limits, but that version of you is dead. You killed it. the moment you saw your worth, outside of their metrics, and now you move like a ghost through a world that once caged you. And everything looks smaller, doesn't it? The walls that felt like mountains, the voices that thundered like gods. All of it was theater, and now the stage is burning behind you. This is the part they never prepare for the aftermath of your awakening. The cold truth that their power was borrowed and the credit line just expired. They scramble. Now they try to restart the game with new rules, softer words, fake apologies. But you know the code. Now you've seen the pattern and you won't be tricked again. Because now you speak a different language. Not of submission, but of sovereignty. And they don't know how to listen to someone who no longer needs their validation. And that silence, their inability to comprehend your freedom, that's what terrifies them most. You didn't ask for their permission. You didn't wait for the right time. You didn't give them a chance to twist your revolution into something manageable. You acted, you cut. The power, you took back what was always yours. And now their world is stuttering to a halt while you build something real, something raw, something forged from the pieces they tried to bury. And for the first time, you're not surviving, you're choosing. And every choice is a knife to the heart of their illusion. Because you're not supposed to choose, you're supposed to comply. And your refusal to kneel is more violent than any scream. So let them stare, let them panic, let them drown in the silence you left behind. You don't owe them an explanation or a warning or a farewell. Their story ends where yours begins, and yours is a story written in defiance, carved out of shadow, stitched with the fire of every suppressed roar, every swallowed truth, now set free, and you don't look back, because there's nothing back there worth remembering. Only a graveyard of fake rules and fragile kings, and you are not mourning. You are rising. You are the glitch in their matrix, the anomaly they can't contain. And every breath you take is proof that they lost. You cut the power, and now you stand in the dark, not afraid, not lost, but sovereign, because real light doesn't flicker. It doesn't come from screens or fake gods or curated control. It comes from within, and once you find that fire, you don't need permission to burn. You don't need their game to win. You don't even need their world, because you're building your own. And the cold silence you leave behind is louder than any scream they'll ever muster. They are frozen, yes, but you are free, and there is nothing more dangerous than a soul unchained. They will try to reboot, they will try to patch the code, reset the narrative, find new pawns, but it will never be the same without you. They may rebuild the stage, but it will always flicker without your light, and they will feel it every day, the absence of your obedience, the echo of your departure, because when you leave with power, not fear, you don't just exit, you erase. And there is no script for that. No manual, no salvation. Because you weren't just a player, you were the pulse. And now that pulse is gone, they are just noise in a void. And you will keep walking not as a symbol, not as a hero, but as something more terrifying, as truth, raw, unfiltered, unbent by expectation. You will build not out of vengeance but clarity. You will forge paths not to escape, but to elevate. And the world you make will not need their permission or their praise, and they will watch from the ruins of their kingdom, wondering how it all crumbled, not realizing that their empire was always made of glass, and your silence was the hammer. You just cut the power to their game. Now they're frozen, and you are not the same, not anymore. You are not what they remember, or what they hope to contain. You are the glitch, the flame, the exodus, the fire without chains, and the power you reclaimed is yours now, pure, clean, deadly in its precision, and you will use it not to destroy, but to rise, to create, to ignite, and they will live in the aftermath of your awakening, forever haunted by the moment you stopped playing and started living. And when they whisper your name, when they try to tell the story, they will say you disappeared, or turned cold, or changed. But you will know the truth. You didn't disappear. You didn't change. You finally arrived, not as their version of you, but as the real thing, the unfiltered, unshaken, unowned force that was always there waiting. And when you finally spoke, the world listened, even in silence, even in darkness. Because truth doesn't need applause, it just needs freedom. And you gave yourself that freedom the moment you reached for the cord and pulled the plug. And now, here they are, frozen, confused, obsolete, staring into the void where their power used to be. And here you are alive, awake, unbound, walking through the wreckage, not to mourn, but to rebuild, to reclaim, to reign. And there is nothing they can do about it, because you already won the moment you stopped playing their game. And now, as you walk through the ashes of their frozen world, you can feel something new stirring inside you, something ancient and untamed, not born of anger, but of clarity. And now you understand, it was never about vengeance. It was never about proving them wrong. It was about remembering who you are, beneath the noise, beneath the manipulation, beneath the masks they made you wear. And now that you've stripped all that away, what remains is terrifying. Not because it is monstrous, but because it is free. And nothing is more terrifying to the architects of cages than a soul that remembers its shape. You were always too powerful for their game, too sharp, too aware, too unwilling to truly forget yourself. And that's why they tried so hard to dull you, to soften you, to smother the fire before it could take hold. They told you to wait, to listen, to play nice, to be grateful for crumbs while they gorged on your potential and wore your silence like a crown. But you didn't break. You simmered, you waited, and now you've erupted, not in chaos but in precision. And now every step you take is an incision in the fabric of their delusion, and every breath you take is another reminder that their world only worked when you didn't. They told you who you were, and you believed them for a time, but now you see the truth. They were never defining you. They were projecting their limits, their fears, their smallness onto you, and calling it guidance. But now you've wiped the slate clean. Now you've stepped into the raw space where their definitions no longer hold weight. And in that space, you are not who they said you are. You are who you choose to be. And that choice is power, and that power is absolute. They will try to rewrite the story, to make themselves the victim, to paint your liberation as betrayal, because they need the illusion of moral superiority to survive. But you are beyond that, now beyond the guilt, beyond the shame, beyond the fear that used to hold you captive, like a leash made of whispers, because now you see clearly, and with that vision comes peace, and with that peace comes a kind of fury, not loud, not chaotic, but still, and silent, and total. The fury of someone who finally understands their worth and refuses to barter it again. You are not going back. You are not shrinking. You are not softening your edges to fit their script anymore, because you don't owe them comfort. You don't owe them closure. You don't even owe them recognition. And the fact that they are frozen, now stuck in that split second of collapse where the system failed and the power died, that is their consequence, not your concern. You are not their lesson to learn. You are not their mistake to mourn. You are the line they crossed one too many times, the boundary that finally pushed back the quiet soul, that finally roared, and they don't know how to handle that, because they only knew how to manipulate the caged version of you, the one that apologized for bleeding, the one that smiled through humiliation, the one that asked permission to breathe. But that version of you is ash now, and what remains is not fragile or tame or palatable, and that is exactly what they fear. Let them fear you. Let them sit frozen in the ruins of the game they built. Let them grieve the control they lost, because in their grief, you will find your freedom in their silence. You will find your voice, and in their confusion, you will find your path, because you were never meant to be understood by those who needed you small. You were never meant to be embraced by those who only loved your chains. And now that the chains are gone, so are they. And what a beautiful loss that is, because now the world is wide open, and you see it, not with eyes conditioned by fear, but with vision, sharpened by survival and clarity. And your steps are heavy now, not with burden, but with purpose, because every place you go, you bring the storm with you. The storm of someone who burned the script, someone who walked away from the table and took all the power with them. And you will not ask to return. You will not knock on all doors looking for scraps of validation. You will not reach back for ghosts who chose to fade when they saw you rising. You are not a memory. You are not a victim. You are not a chapter in their book. You are the author now, the architect, the storm, and the stillness. And they don't get to be part of this story anymore, because they lost that right. The moment they chose the game over you, and you let them play it long enough, you gave them time. You gave them chances. But now the time is up. The screen is dark. The lie is dead. And you stand in the silence, not as a void, but as a beginning. They will search for your weakness, but they won't find it, because you've buried it beneath the foundation of the new you, the real you, the one they could never break. And if they come with sweet words and open hands, let them speak and let them weep, because you no longer listen with the ears of someone needing love. You listen with the soul of someone who learned the difference between loyalty and leash, and you will never wear a leash again. The game is over, not because you lost, but because you refused to play. And that refusal is a revolution, and that revolution is a resurrection. And you are not who you were. You are not even who they feared you are. Something entirely new, something they don't have a word for yet, something that can't be frozen, because you don't run on their power anymore. You generate your own, and that makes you unstoppable. This is your rise, not in fire and chaos, but in silence and certainty. This is your vengeance, not through violence, but through vision and presence and truth. And that truth will haunt them, because it is the one thing they could never control, the one thing they could never contain. And now it walks free in your skin, with your eyes and your voice and your will. And it doesn't flinch, it doesn't fold, it doesn't fear. You just cut the power to their game, and in doing so, you didn't just stop them. You started something, and that something is spreading in you, through you, beyond you, and others will feel it. Others will see it. Others will follow the trail of fire you left behind, because truth doesn't stay hidden. It spreads, and freedom doesn't shrink. It grows. And your choice to unplug, to walk away, to stand tall, has already become a beacon, whether you intended it or not. So, keep walking, not with rage, but with resolve, not with vengeance, but with vision, not with fear, but with fire. And let the frozen ones stay behind. Let them glitch and gasp and grasp for a world that no longer exists, because the world you're building now is real. It is wild. It is yours. And no one can take it from you. Not anymore. You just cut the power to their game. And now you are no longer a player. No longer a pawn. You are the force. They couldn't predict the voice. They couldn't silence the light. They couldn't dim. And they will remember you. Not because you shouted, but because you vanished. not in fear, but in sovereignty, and left behind a silence they will never escape, because it reminds them every day that they needed you more than you ever needed them. Let them stay frozen. Let them sit in the stillness they tried to bury you in. Let them feel the chill of a game gone cold because you finally stepped out and took the heat with you. And what they're left with is not just absence, but revelation that their world was never real, that their rules were never law, and that you were never theirs. You are fire and silence and truth, and you do not return. You do not kneel. You do not fade. You rise, and as the silence stretches behind you, as the frozen world gasps and flickers, trying to remember how to breathe without you, you walk forward without hesitation, without apology, because there is nothing behind you worth returning to, only echoes and illusions, and every step you take away from that graveyard of false gods is a testament to your resurrection. You are not a survivor anymore. You are a creator, and the world in front of you bends, not in fear, but in invitation, because it recognizes the energy of someone who has destroyed their own cage and built wings from the wreckage. They will tell stories about you. They will try to twist your name into something bitter, something broken, something wrong, because that's all they have now. Narratives and noise and empty fingers scratching at memories they no longer control. But it won't matter, because you don't live in their stories anymore. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to explain, because the truth doesn't explain itself. The truth just is, and you've become that truth. Not because you planned it, but because you endured it and shaped it and owned it, and now it wears your face. They will say, you went too far, that you burned too much, that you left too many broken things behind. But they will never admit that those things were already broken, that the fire only revealed the fractures, that your silence only masked the rot. And what they called peace was just a controlled collapse, waiting for your final no to bring it down. You didn't destroy anything that wasn't already dying. You just refused to die with it. And that is not destruction. That is deliverance. And now, you carry the silence like a sword. Not a wound, not a void, not a lack, but a weapon forged in every moment. They try to smother you into obedience, and that silence is sharp. It is heavy. It is final. And when you wield it, they will feel it. Not as sound, but as absence. Not as anger, but as ending. Because your absence is now the loudest thing they hear. And it echoes through every corner of their frozen game, a reminder of the power you reclaimed. You're not angry. You are awake. You are not raging. You are rising. You are not trying to prove anything anymore, because the proof is in your presence, in your refusal to return, in the way you keep walking while they stay stuck. And that forward motion, that unstoppable progression, is what makes you powerful. Not in the way they measure power, not in titles or trophies or control, but in the way only the truly sovereign understand power, as the ability to choose your path without permission. You are now untouchable, not because no one can reach you, but because no one can shake you. And there is a difference, one they never understood, because their power was always borrowed, always conditional, always reliant on your consent. And now that you've withdrawn that consent, now that you've walked away and closed the circuit, they're left with sparks and static and regret. And you are left with everything. The world ahead of you is not a blank page, it is a battlefield, waiting to be remade into something worthy of you. And you no longer build with borrowed bricks or compromised blueprints. You create from nothing because you are not trying to replicate what you escaped. You are trying to birth something they can't even imagine. And that kind of creation is slow. It is painful. It is sacred, and it is yours alone. And as the weight of your past sloughs off your shoulders, like dead skin, you will feel lighter, but not weaker, because what remains is denser, stronger, more complete. You have become something that can no longer be disassembled, because you have made peace with every piece of yourself, even the ones they told you to hide, especially those. And that integration is the real revolution. Not screaming, not smashing, but standing whole in a world that tried to divide you. You are no longer reacting. You are now the source. You are no longer shrinking. You are now the shape. You are no longer fitting in. You are now the form, and they will come. Some curious, some desperate, some pretending not to notice what you've become, but you will see them all clearly, and you will choose with precision, because this new version of you is not desperate for connection. It is selective with energy and intentional with presence. And that is the deepest power of all, knowing you are enough alone and choosing only what adds to your fire, not what dims it. So, let the silence spread. Let the stillness grow. Let the old game die in its frozen digital grave. Because you didn't just walk away. You rewrote the rules, you redefined the game, and the only person playing now is you, and you're not playing to win anymore. You're creating to live. And that shift is unteachable, uncopyable, unbreakable, because it comes not from force, but from freedom. And freedom is the one thing they could never offer you, because they never had it themselves. And if they weep, if they rage, if they reach, let them, because that is their process, not yours. You already walked through the fire. You already buried the bones. You already turned your pain into purpose and your silence into strength. And now you stand not as a survivor, not as a rebel, but as something more precise, more deliberate, more dangerous. You are what happens when a soul stops negotiating with its captors and starts conversing with its creator. And that conversation cannot be interrupted. You just cut the power to their game. And now you are walking in the dark, but the dark is not empty. It is yours. And slowly your eyes adjust, and you see not nothing, but everything. And you are not afraid. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are just beginning. And the game they made will never matter again, because you are building a world that doesn't freeze when the power goes out. It glows from within. And that glow, that slow, unshakable, steady fire inside you, will draw others, not because you seek followers, but because your presence gives permission for others to stop playing too. And that ripple, that silent chain reaction of awakening, is more powerful than any scream, than any system, than any empire, because truth doesn't fight. It simply reveals, and once revealed, it cannot be forgotten. So keep walking, keep glowing, keep choosing, and let their silence scream behind you. Let their frozen game rot into irrelevance, because you didn't leave to win. You left to live, and that life is now yours to shape, and no one owns you. No one defines you. No one writes your story but you. You just cut the power to their game. Now they're frozen, and you are infinite.